and for having courage to do what's right.
That's right. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, our 37th governor, the Honorable John Kitzhaber.
Well, thank you very much, Tony, and I want to ask all of you to give another round of applause for SEI and what Tony's been doing up in Portland for years and years and years. Really, we are here to talk about a profound sense of urgency. These aren't just numbers, these are children with names and faces and hopes and dreams of their own. And really what we're talking about is just taking the things that are already working in places like SEI and taking them to scale throughout the state of Oregon. So I want to thank you for coming here to impress upon the legislature the sense of urgency to improve the academic outcomes of every single child here in the state of Oregon. You know that we've set some very ambitious goals for ourselves. That by 2025, that's the class that the kindergartners next year will graduate in, 2025, that we have 100% high school graduation rates in Oregon, that 40% of those graduates will go on and get at least 2 years of post-secondary education and training, and another 40% will get at least a baccalaureate degree or higher. We've also committed ourselves to raising the per capita income in this state back up above the national average in every corner of Oregon and erasing the disparities in income that have existed for far too long within our communities of color. The fact is that we cannot and will not achieve those goals unless we focus intentionally and specifically on children of color, on English language learners, and on those who live in poverty. We know that 45,000 children are born each year in the state of Oregon, and 40%, over 18,000 of those kids, are on a pathway to school failure because of risk factors that they bring with them. They live in poverty, they haven't had access to the early childhood services that are necessary to make sure that they're ready for school when they get there. We know that 1 out of every 4 children in this state doesn't get enough to eat. We know that over half of African American children in this state live in poverty. We know that we are graduating only 67% of our students, and the graduation rate among communities of color is far lower, and we know that that is no longer acceptable here in the state of Oregon. Again, if we are to erase that future and build an alternative future, we have to focus in our educational efforts specifically and intentionally on children of color, on English language learners, and on those who live in poverty. Because 1 out of every 4 children in our state lives in a household where no English is spoken. We know that over 1/3 of our children are children of color, and that diversity is only going to grow each year on into the future. So now is the time to create a sense of urgency. Now is not the time to falter and step back. As Teddy Roosevelt once said, in any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The worst thing you can do is nothing. So once more, I thank you for being here. We have introduced 2 pieces of legislation, Senate Bill 1581 and House Bill 5165, that are designed to ensure that we will increase the number of students of color and the number of English language learners who are ready to learn when they get to kindergarten and who will graduate with access to high school and post-secondary training, and that will make the whole state better and lift up our entire society. I'd like to just close here. You're a very brave audience to be out here in this cold weather. I want to just close by reminding you of the words of Robert Kennedy 44 years ago, who was one of my political heroes and one of the reasons I got into politics. He gave a speech in Cleveland to the Cleveland City Club the day after Martin Luther King was assassinated. And it was a speech about the stain of violence that was spreading through our country, a violence that would claim his own life less than 2 months later. And it started out saying that this is a day of shame and sorrow. But he went on to talk about another kind of violence, and that was the violence of institutions. A violence that was slower but just as deadly destructive as the shot or the bomb in the night. It was the violence of indifference and inaction and slow decay. It's the violence that afflicts the poor, It's the violence that poisons the relationships between people because of their colors or their skin. It's the slow destruction of a child, from hunger, from schools without books, from homes without heat in the winter. We're here today, 44 years later, to make sure that that is not our future in Oregon. Not here, not now, not in the state of Oregon. We are here today to ensure that every single child in our state, regardless of their color, regardless of their home language, regardless of how much money their family makes, has an equal opportunity and, in fact, a certainty of achieving academic excellence and a place in our society of the 21st century. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to working with you over the months and years ahead.
¿Se puede? Can we do it? Remember, we can only do it if we are present. Those ones that are not present don't count. There is a long battle going on in this building, and it's going to move all the way to the legislative session 2013. We all have to remain united.